Oh, Tim, your adventures continue to amaze and impress. Anyways, we've got another demo coming right up. It is Red Faction Armageddon, and I've got Jim here from Volition, who's here to show us the game. Jim, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, appreciate it.
How's your show going so far?
Going really well, actually.
Yeah?
People seem pretty excited about what we've got to show.
I have to say, the THQ booth over there in the South Hall is crazy. You guys have wrestlers, giant mech suits, and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, we've got a lot of things to show there. Yeah, we're pretty excited about it.
All right, so let's talk about Red Faction Armageddon. Red Faction Guerrilla came out a little while ago, and it impressed a lot of people.
Yeah.
That game, it was a critical darling, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we had a lot of positive reaction on that. We were pretty pleased with that.
So how do you follow that up?
God, well, it's definitely tricky. What we did was we really looked at a lot of the feedback that we got on Red Faction Guerrilla, used our own imagination a little bit in terms of what kinds of things we wanted to do to add to the series, and cooked up what we've got with Red Faction Armageddon.
All right, well, we've got the game right here. Let's take a look at it right now.
Perfect. Yeah, what we see here is this character's name is Darius Mason. He is actually the grandson of Alec and Samanya, the characters from Red Faction Guerrilla. And what's going on here is that the surface of Mars has been destroyed, and the colonists have had to rebuild their civilization underground. It took them about 10 years to do so. But unfortunately, in about 3 days' time, civilization has just been ripped apart. And Darius is smack dab in the middle of all of it, trying to find out what's going on. Some of the people actually believe that he had something to do with it. So it's a situation where he's trying to find out what's happening. It's a horrible massacre has occurred here. Something is infesting the world. And Darius is just trying to find out what is happening and what he can do to try to help. In this particular case, he's leading a convoy of survivors. And here we get to see our first glimpse that something is definitely not going very well. What we see here is part of the infestation. These enemies here, they're pretty easy to fight one-on-one, but they hunt in packs.
Right.
And in this case here, Darius is going to try to take them out as best he can. So he's using his PPR to take each one of these guys out. See that they're definitely a more nimble sort of enemy. Of course, we have to have the more brutal sort of ending to it. And those aren't the only types of enemies that you're going to fight in the game. We actually still have the humans that destroy the surface that you'll find from time to time. As you go up on the surface, most of the game takes place underground. And it's been 2 generations since the events of Red Faction Guerrilla, so the Red Faction, they've had an opportunity to come up with new weapons and new technologies that they use in their fight. This area here you can see is heavily infested, and Darius is going to have to definitely clear this area out in order for the convoy to get through. And what we're about to see is one of the new pieces of technology. This is called a magnet gun. It's our signature weapon in the game, and what it does is a very simple concept. You fire the first target on the item that you want to move to the second target, with some pretty devastating results.
That seems like it would come in handy for messing stuff up, but also maybe puzzle elements as well?
Absolutely, yeah. You do just an enormous amount of destruction with it. It definitely, without this destruction engine, there's no way you'd be able to do the sorts of things that you can do here.
Right.
And yeah, you definitely, there's areas, there's obstacles that you have to overcome, that you can destroy to get past. And here what we're seeing is just a glimpse of is what we call the Nano Forge. It's an item that was actually available in Red Faction Guerrilla, but over the generations it's been handed down to Darius, and they've been able to modify it over time. And what we were seeing there was a repair function from it. And in this case, Darius is using it to repair these barricades, which he's then using as magnet gun ammo. So it's a lot of fun to find ways that you can use both of these things with each other in conjunction with each other. Here we're seeing again, he's taking those barricades and launching it at them. And what we're about to see right now, though, is because of some of these things that he's doing, the destruction that Darius is doing, he's about to call some of the defenses of this infestation. So here we're seeing a new enemy. Obviously, it's a much more sophisticated enemy than the ones we saw before, much deadlier. They'll hunt in packs, but they're definitely much more difficult to take out one-on-one. But what we see here is that with a magnet gun, it's actually a lot of fun to take these guys out. You can use the world as your own weapon with the magnet gun, and you see these giant pieces of the world come flying into these guys to take them out.
So it seems like one of the big differences between Red Faction Guerrilla and this one is that Guerrilla, it was, the wide open landscape.
Yes.
The buildings were sort of like, they really stood out from the terrain, these sort of like isolated buildings, and you knew how to approach everyone from any direction. Here, it looks like it's a bit more like maybe the buildings are a part of the underground a bit more.
Exactly right. Yeah, what we've done is by bringing everything underground, it's allowed us to do a few different things. It's allowed us to, number one, put a much greater density of structures in the area. Whereas before they were a bit more spread out in the surface.
Yeah.
Now you get them a little more tightly impacted, and here we see some of the repair again, which is great. But they're much more impacted, and so what it does is you get a lot more collateral damage. You'll take out a building and it will collapse onto another structure and bring it down. It also gives the designers a chance to put destructibles along the walls and on the ceilings here. So you'll actually see us be able to do things like take out lighting fixtures and bring them down on the enemies below. It's just a much more dynamic sort of landscape from doing that. The other thing that we've been able to do by bringing the world underground is that just from an aesthetic standpoint, we have a lot more variety in the world. Whereas before in Red Faction Guerrilla, we always joke around, there's only so many different ways you can make Red Rock Mars look different from each other. But no one's been underground in Mars, so we take a lot of creative liberties of our interpretation of what that'd be like. And so here, we have a much sort of a icier sort of area. We have other areas, a lot of things we haven't shown yet at our show here at E3. Now you see there's a huge swarm of guys coming out. And in fact, you'll see one of our other things, one of our signature elements of Red Faction Armageddon, and that is the Red Faction Leo. And this is a giant exoskeleton right here that you use. Does an enormous amount of damage, takes an enormous amount of punishment, and obviously has a lot of weapons at its disposal. Here it's got a shoulder bash, independent rockets will fly at the targets, has a rail driver that it can do at the targets. Just a simple punch will just give an alien right off the bat. It's a lot of fun to be able to use this guy. What we did was we had a walker in Red Faction Guerrilla. People loved it. You just go through, destroy things at will. And what we wanted to do was to basically militarize it and make it at a more tactical size. So here you'll be able to see him start to take out this infection target just by bashing through it with its exoskeleton. Go back and forth through it. It's just a lot of fun to be able to bash this thing through the enemies, fire its rockets at them. It just makes mincemeat out of things in a very quick way. And this is also representative of some of the things we try to do from a vehicle standpoint. Our vehicles are definitely a bit more exotic in Red Faction Armageddon. What we always talk about is that since it's been a couple of generations since the events of Guerrilla, technology within the game world has advanced, and so we have a lot more exotic vehicles. You're not just finding the same old four-wheeled vehicles with a steering wheel like you and I might drive in the real world. Instead, you get a lot of these really exotic sort of vehicles that Darius will get to drive.
So we've got some audience questions flowing in here,
Great.
Jim, and it seems like a lot of people are curious about the iconic hammer from Guerrilla.
Whether or not that's going to be back, and it'll definitely be back.
All right.
That is definitely still very much in our game.
Let's see here. Peter from Copenhagen is wondering about the cover system.
Yes. And what we've done is we've actually simplified that quite a bit. And it is not a specific system that will allow you to snap to cover, but instead what we do is by having the repair functionality and your ability to repair things like barricades, destructible items, you actually can use that as cover. But because it's such a dynamic sort of sequence, we didn't want to just force you to have to snap into cover. Instead, you have an old barricade, you can repair it, bring it back, you can destroy it, use it as magnet gun ammo, repair it again. So it's a much more dynamic sort of thing. So we didn't want to use the snap to cover like we've done in the past, and instead made it much more dynamic.
A lot of questions are coming in about whether this is still quite as open world and sandboxy as the last one.
Yeah, so that's another area where we've taken a bit of a departure from what we did at Guerrilla and kind of went back full circle to some of our origins with Red Faction 1 and 2. So what happens now is where in Red Faction Guerrilla we had a much more open environment. You could get in a car, drive to where you want to go. What we found was that a lot of those experiences would start to get slightly more tedious. You'd have a lot of destruction you want to do.
Yeah.
You want to go to the next spot, hop in the car, take off, but you're kind of driving to an area that doesn't offer as much in the way of destruction and doesn't capitalize on the gameplay we really wanted to put front and center.
Right.
So what we've done is we've brought everything in, we've made it much more compact, but you still have open areas like this one here that we see where Darius is fighting in. It is a slightly more open environment. You have a lot of choice about the kind of destruction you want to do. You can go at the combat in the way that you want to go about it yourself. but it is definitely a much more linear sort of progression to it, and that's also allowed us to do a much tighter narrative to it as well.
Right.
Yeah, here we're seeing some of the effects of the infestation in a much more dire sort of way.
Quite a number of questions coming in on the subject of multiplayer.
Yes, unfortunately that's one of those topics we're not prepared to go into as much. We definitely have some really interesting things cooked up, I think, for multiplayer, and I think that the fans are going to be excited about it, but unfortunately, I hate to say it, but they're going to have to wait a little longer for some of those details.
Yeah, in fact, you can probably see this email from Trent in Oklahoma. Wrote the word multiplayer about 17 times in a single email.
I think we'll take care of Trent. We've definitely got some multiplayer stuff in mind. We put it this way: the team plays it, and we all love it.
Yeah.
So I think that the people will be, and we play it 1,000,000 times a day. So if we still love it, then I think it's a good sign for the fans.
Yeah, that is definitely a good sign. All right, let's see what other kinds of questions we've got coming in here. If my computer would cooperate. Some of these people are wondering how many weapons you can carry at one time.
That's one of the things we've actually done is to open it up quite a bit more. So rather than having the specific areas where you'd have to go and acquire new weapons, Darius will carry them all at any given time, and he has 4 of them that are live that he can easily swap to, and if he wants to trade those weapons out, he's able to go into the shell, trade out to his favorite weapons, and just go from there. The other thing that he has is with the Nano Forge, and that's the area that's doing the repair item, has a number of different abilities in it that we're not quite showing yet, but that's something that he's also able to use at the same time. In other words, he won't have to change out to a repair gun or any of the other abilities that the Nano Forge has at its disposal. Instead, you'll be able to use a weapon and with one button press and use the Nano Forge with another one. So it gives a lot more flexibility in terms of what you want to do at any given time.
Yeah, a lot of questions here on the subject of the weapons. Any ones that you haven't quite mentioned yet? I know you've gone over a lot, but...
Yeah, I can't get too specific, but I'll talk in a kind of a broad sense that one of the things that we did with having Red Faction Guerrilla to start from as a foundation with Destruction is that it allowed us from a very early point to start brainstorming a lot of weapons. And what we did with that was we really wanted to maximize the ratio of Destruction-based weapons. And so you definitely still have your more standard weapons like the PPR that you've been seeing that's look a little bit more like a standard machine gun. But in terms of the Destruction-based weapons, we have a lot of pretty creative ones in mind, and I think the fans are going to be pretty excited about the ones that are going to be coming up.
Asan from Copenhagen is wondering, now that this game has new different types of enemies, is there going to be any boss fights in there?
Yes. I think it's fair to say that we'll definitely be having things along those lines. We definitely try to play with the scale of the enemies, and some of the things, if you look very closely in some of the teaser and the trailer we released, you'll see that there's definitely a sense of scale to some of the enemies you fight. And yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun along those lines.
All right, Jim. Well, I enjoyed Guerrilla a lot. This one is looking great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you having us.
Yeah, definitely. Before I let you get off the stage here, though, when is Armageddon going to be out, and which platforms is it out for?
Absolutely. It's going to be out in March of 2011, and it's going to be available for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and PC.
All right, cool. So, guys, that is just about going to do it for Red Faction Armageddon. Now it's time for the next booth tour. Let's have a look.